Pete Sampson for theathletic.com, also covers Notre Dame, among other things, joins us on 365 Sports. And, Pete, thank you very much for your time. So it seems like Notre Dame is not getting a lot of attention, even though they're Notre Dame, but they're a team that every time I look at any kind of poll, they're inside the top 10. Is that about where you think they are, just inside the top 10? And am I wrong thinking they're somewhat under the radar?
Yeah, I think that's, are they Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon? No, Texas, they're not, I think, at that level, but they're kind of in the next group of teams that I think are going to be fighting to host a first round playoff game. So are they under the radar? Maybe, maybe not. But I think they're a legit top 10 team. But when I say top 10 team, I mean somewhere between 6 and 10, not between 1 and 5.
Their schedule's not easy. And of course, it never really is. But if they're 10 and 2, are they okay in the playoff, or do they need to be 11 and 1?
To host, obviously 11 and 1, 10 and 2. It's usually I would agree. Their schedule is legit. It's got some good markers in it. This year, it's got one at the beginning with A&M, even though we're not totally sure what A&M is going to look like. And then, Florida State comes here to South Bend in November, and then you go to USC at the end. It's kind of hard to tell what USC is going to be at that point. Compared to last year when it was USC, but Caleb Williams, USC, Ohio State, and Clemson, the schedule definitely is lighter than Notre Dame typically plays. So I think that's where the 10 and 2. I don't know if they make it at 10 and 2. I think they probably would, but I think they would be sweating it on championship Saturday if they finish 10 and 2, especially with the schedule not having quite as many marquee games as maybe they normally would.
What do you think Marcus Freeman will be better at this year than he wasn't the first year?
Well, I think he's figured out that he needs to have a big-time offensive coordinator who has seen stuff, has been able to sort of work through problems in game, make adjustments quickly, and they get that in Mike Denbrock, who comes back to Notre Dame from LSU. So I think that's probably the biggest lesson learned for him. Is I got to have somebody who's been through the wars as my offensive coordinator. They didn't really have that the last 2 years with Tommy Rees and then with Jared Parker. So I think that's probably the biggest lesson learned by Freeman.
How much better are they on offense skill-wise than they were a year ago when you add guys like Bo Collins, Jaden Greathouse another year under the belt, and then, of course, not to knock Sam Hartman, he was a very efficient and good quarterback, but Riley Leonard is a step or two above.
Yeah, I think at receiver they're so much better than they were last year. They went into the Duke game last season with 3 healthy scholarship receivers, which is just none of whom are still on the roster. It was bare bones last year. They really did not put Hartman in a position to succeed. I think Leonard brings more to the table than Hartman offered in terms of his mobility. Certainly not as a passer or in terms of actual game experience, but it's the running back position still fine, even though you lose Audric Estimate. Tight end Mitchell Evans comes back. They need to figure out the offensive line. It's different. Usually Notre Dame, they're built from the offensive line out. This year, I feel like they're sort of built at the skill positions back in. But yeah, I think Leonard is going to give them a mobility threat that Hartman never really offered them last year.
What was, or how much of a ripple at all were the Lincoln Riley comments about the Notre Dame series, which I'm old enough to know how far that goes back. Yeah. And the great memories. I brought up the Anthony Davis 6-touchdown game, I think, in 72, whatever it was. That's how old I am. But was there any kind of murmur about whether or not that series would continue?
Yeah, there is. There's concern. I don't think it's like a fire alarm at this point, but USC's in a spot right now where they go to a conference. They don't know what they're getting into necessarily. They're coming to the Midwest 3 or 4 times a year. You hate to see tradition go by the wayside because that's like one of the great series in college football. But I can understand Riley being like, hey, could we at least take a look at this? But you would like to think that there would be people in charge there that'd be like, yeah, we looked at that. We're still doing it. Like, this is what college football is all about. But yeah, I mean, USC is just kind of entering into a new world here where maybe don't open with LSU and end with Notre Dame. Maybe the LSU game is kind of more of the game you need to put by the wayside opposed to dropping a historical rival that's like, a marker of college football history.
How do you feel about their overall depth? Obviously, had the big injury on the offensive line this week, and you're going to have more of those. Is this a team that can withstand those things?
It's on the offensive line. No, Charles Jagasaw, even though he's played 66 snaps of offensive line, he was their most talented offensive lineman going into his sophomore year. So that is a killer. They're very deep on the defensive line. Pretty deep at linebacker, wide receiver. They're very deep. Tight end is solid. Running back room solid. But quarterback, cornerback, those are probably the positions that they're a little thin. Certainly offensive line now, but everybody's got their problems. I think Notre Dame's depth is probably better in the defensive front seven than it's been in some time, but on the offensive line, that's probably where they're a little bit short right now.
I saw your note from Al Washington, the defensive line coach with the Irish, that opening game, even though it's an evening start at Kyle Field and A&M, it will be hotter than Hades because 6:30 doesn't matter. It's no different than 2:30 in the afternoon. And the depth on the offensive line, will they have the ability to rotate a bunch of guys in and out during that game?
Oh, yeah. I mean, on the defensive front, they are so much deeper than when they opened at Texas in 2016, where, they maybe went 6 deep and the game went to double overtime and they played one of their defensive ends like 85 snaps. That's an insane thing to try to do. But Notre Dame they didn't have the bodies up front to do it. Now, yeah, they will play 10 guys at Texas A&M. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But I think that's it's 10 quality guys. I don't feel like they're going to be stealing snaps just to give a guy a rest. And the frontline guys, they're going to start 4 grad students on the defensive line. Riley Mills and Howard Cross on the interior are both bona fide All-American level type players. So they should be very good at the top of the defensive line and incredibly deep too.
One of those wide receivers I neglected to mention is former quarterback Tyler Buckner and now Notre Dame lacrosse superstar. I guess I don't know. I didn't follow him there, but
national champion at least.
National champion, yeah, in lacrosse. How much do you think he will play at wide receiver?
He won't,
okay.
And that's on part. They're deep enough, and he would be probably the 12th or 13th guy at that position. They've recruited well. They did a great job in the transfer portal. You mentioned Bo Collins. They also get Chris Mitchell from FIU, 1,000-yard receiver. Jaden Harrison from Marshall, who's probably more of a return guy, but has been working as sort of the backup slot to Jaden Greathouse. And then, Greathouse from your area, they think he is going to be a star, that he is the best of that position, maybe by far. So that's the guy to watch, number one for Notre Dame, if you're looking for a local connection there on the Irish roster.
Greathouse is the one from Lake Travis? Is that right? Yeah. Heck of a player, man. He's a dude. Hey, this might be a dumb question, but that's okay. If you don't know the answer, it's not dumb. The NIL that we now see in college athletics, how has Notre Dame handled that?
Probably more aggressive than I would have thought they would have been.
Okay.
You see what they've done in the transfer portal, getting Sam Hartman and then Riley Leonard. Those are free. They're not just coming here because they like Rudy. So Notre Dame's success in the transfer portal is well funded. They're not really going the upfront payment high school prospect route with NIL, but in terms of taking care of their roster, to get Riley Mills back, Xavier Watts back, Howard Cross back for final years in South Bend. Again, that's not a free transaction. So I think Notre Dame's approach to NIL has been much more, let's invest as much as we can in established talent and then hire the best coaches that we can. Both their coordinators are on 4-year deals at $2 million per year. Like they're paying big money for coaches and to keep proven talent on campus. So that's been sort of the crux of their NIL approach.
Pete Bavacqua has reiterated to everybody in the midst of conference realignment that Notre Dame has, no plans to jump into it. They want to keep their unique independence. And every rule that gets made, I think people in the greater scheme of things keep thinking that Notre Dame is somehow not a part of this. Whoever their AD is, whether it be Jack Swarbrick forever or Pete Bavacqua, has as much say in this as does Tony Petitti or Brett Yormark or Greg Sankey or Jim Phillips, because he's in that group. So is there anything short of them absolutely needing to that would ever change their mind on that?
Probably not. I mean, I guess I would never say never, but if the ACC collapsed and USC said we're not going to play you anymore, and maybe the playoff structure changed again where it wasn't as favorable for Notre Dame, I really think you would need like 3 things to happen to get them to move. And one of them is not going to be media rights, because NBC took care of them when they re-signed in the last year. So they're set financially, that they're well above the ACC and the Big 12. They're in the same neighborhood as the SEC and the Big 10. So financially you're good, but you got to play a schedule that's compelling for your media partner and to make the playoff. If the SEC goes to 9 games, the Big 10 is suddenly more reluctant to play Notre Dame, then maybe you've got some issues. But I think the Big 10 doesn't want Notre Dame to join the SEC in any capacity, nor does the SEC want Notre Dame to join the Big 10 in any capacity. So I think that both those leagues will continue to play Notre Dame because they don't want to push them to the other. So they're in good shape independence-wise right now. 10 years from now, that's a long time. Kind of hard to look that far into the future.
By the way, I need to correct myself. Sandra Green, thank you. It's Jaden Greathouse is from Westlake, Austin Westlake.
Whoa.
The other, they're huge rivals. Westlake's had the best of that in recent years after Lake Travis had a great run. Pete, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. On the recruiting front, on the quarterback that has decommitted and now looks like he's headed to Auburn, how much of a sting is that?
It's a big one. I mean, they've been with Deuce Knight for about a year now. He was always going to be tough to keep. And that signing him and then keeping him on campus, because they have CJ Carr in the freshman class right now, quarterback. But that burns them, because they look at Deuce Knight and feel like this is a kid who's got future number 1 overall potential. Like he is very much like a lottery ticket prospect. Like,
yep.
Who knows if he will work out, but if he does work out, the ceiling is incredibly high on somebody like him.
Yeah, it's a revolving door at times, but he's a high-level player. Auburn has him, Notre Dame did, and now we'll see how Notre Dame reacts to that. Pete, great stuff. Thank you very much for responding to the invitation. Thanks for your time, and have a great week.
Of course. Thanks, guys.
Pete Sampson, theathletic.com.